started.
Let's go, cat. Okay, starts off with e4. Now let's play d5. Haven't had a Scandinavian in a while. He takes. That's good. So, does he defend the pawn, or does he play d4, the normal move? Or even knight f3. Knight f3 and d4 are the most typical kind of moves here. If he plays c4, then I play c6 and go for a gambit. If he plays that, I don't think I've seen that one before. Let's see, if I play c6 here, he takes, I take. It's a way to get a gambit. Is that any good? c6, pawn takes, knight takes. He's got a pin. I don't have much development. I don't think that's an especially good gambit. So let's just offer to trade off his light squared bishop. He doesn't want to trade it. Okay, well, let's get the pawn back then. That was the main idea. Was to develop the... I just wanted to recapture that pawn with the knight rather than the queen. Okay, and then he goes with d4, the normal move. So there's two ways to develop. One is with bishop g4, which seems to be ruled out in this case. And the other one is to develop with g6 and bishop to g7 and keep this bishop over here on the center and queen side. And it looks like I can maybe get in the move c5 at some point. But first I think I'd like to just castle, get out of the center. My knight's very safe here. He can't push the e-pawn forward and harass the knight anymore because that pawn is gone. So I don't think this can be too bad. Although he might, I may end up playing c6 rather than c5. Just wait and see, though. Let's see how it goes. Yeah, so white has followed a very logical development scheme. Yeah, so that check kind of displaced my bishop. Otherwise, I would be in a normal type of position. If I go bishop g4 now and he kicks it, do I really want to trade it for that? I don't know. Go c5, he might push or take. Can't predict. Pushing might be a little annoying. c4 he pushes, then I play e6, c5 rather. I think I'm going to push anyway. If he takes, I'm just going to develop my knight. Not be in too much of a hurry to round up those pawns. So I could even go knight a6, couldn't I, if he takes? Maybe that's the better move. Knight a6 to c5, and the knight on a6 prevents him from playing b4, and I can also bring the rook to c8, so I like that knight a6 idea. And then if he doesn't take, can I play e6? He could keep pushing that pawn. The pawn could go all the way to d6, which would be kind of annoying too. Yeah, so maybe instead of e6, I really should just play knight a6, even here. Knight a6, from a6 it could go to b4, or it could come back to c7. Yeah, I don't want to push e6 until I can prevent that pawn from moving. I could go knight e8 to d6 at some point to blockade that pawn, and then I could play e6. But let's get this knight out first. Get this knight into the game. This bishop still feels misplaced somehow. So maybe that's one point of e6 is giving this bishop something to do. Aha. Let's kick that bishop and see what it wants to do from there. Yeah, I could bring this other knight around. Knight c7, e8. And actually, I should have thought about that a little bit before I played that. Sometimes this h-pawn is a liability here, and sometimes it's even loose, right? You trade undefends the h-pawn. Here, though, this just kind of helps him with his development. And, well, we'll see where that goes from there. So before I play knight c7, now I have to play b6 to defend the c-pawn. You know, this b-pawn was loose. That b-pawn was loose, and I didn't think about that. I moved too quickly there. I still wouldn't have taken, having had time to think about it now, I still wouldn't have taken because rook here, and I move the bishop, and he grabs this, my b-pawn, which would be more dangerous even, activating his rook. So it wouldn't have been good to take the pawn, but I should have at least paused to calculate. Now he defends the b-pawn. I'm going to play b6 and see what kind of ideas he has. He's got a bad bishop here. I have the bishop pair, so I have some things going for me in this position. Just got to get this knight into the game. Knight c7, e8, and then either d6 or f6. And depending on how it looks. And yeah, he's having trouble finding a role for his bishop too. And I have bishop to f5 with the tempo, but he can just defend the knight, so I don't think that was such a great idea. Although, after I go knight e8, and I'm poised to jump into one of these squares, then maybe I want to go bishop f4 and trade off that knight and then bring my knight to a good square. Maybe that's the way to go. Get rid of my problem bishop, get rid of his active knight, all in one go. So if I go bishop to f5 now, can he just move the knight away, like knight here, and then I have nothing better than trading off his bishop. And then I come back with the knight. Yeah, I don't necessarily want to trade off my light-squared bishop for his light-squared bishop. In the long run, my light-squared bishop ought to be useful, ought to be good for something. So let's keep it around for a while longer. Okay, so we just went for the trade. So now bishop g4 is something I could consider, because if he kicks it, I would take the knight, and that would damage his pawns. So he prevents that. Okay. So let's contest. I need to contest the open file, the only open file here.
Check.
And he takes. I can bring a rook over, but I can bring a rook over too. And I will. That's why the queen is going to f8, so I have rook to e8. So I think in the long run he can't own that file. He might want to own the e file, but I can't. I don't want to let him own it, and I don't think he can forcibly take it by force. I don't think it's possible. So let's think about things. The king could go to h7 and defend these pawns, and then the bishop would be free to move. The bishop has... I don't know where it could go to, though. This knight is covering critical squares. Yeah, so it would have been a good deal if I could have gotten that bishop g4 move in, but he played that h3 move just in time. Okay, and that move kind of slows me down from playing king h2, does it? Not really. It slows me down from playing bishop to f4, I guess. His back rank is still defended. These squares are opening up. Let's see, how about... Okay, well, his queen is hitting e6. I should pay attention. His queen is hitting e6, so I should defend that. And, yeah, I was wondering about pushing some pawns over on the queen side to open up a line over here. I need open lines for my bishops. And that's the bishop pair advantage, right? The open lines. So how to get there? How about going for the end game like this? Now this trade undefends my h-pawn once again, but his knight is not attacking it, and his bishop can't attack it, so that shouldn't be too bad. And then if I ever manage to activate this light squared bishop, I should be in pretty good shape. He's got pawns I can attack here. Could consider playing a6, b5, something like that. Okay, so he lets me check and take a pawn here rather than going for that endgame. Is it safe for me to check and take a pawn? Am I getting mated here?
Check.
I didn't see a problem with that. Ah, that was the problem. The problem was I was leaving my e-pawn hanging. I just didn't want to defend it, I guess. Okay, so now it's a little awkward. Let's see. He's attacking my bishop, and that bishop doesn't have any squares to go to. And the queen can't easily get back and defend it. I can counterattack. Take this pawn and attack his bishop. And let's see how this goes. So let's see, he takes my bishop, I take his bishop, he takes my pawn, I take his pawn, he takes my pawn, I take his pawn, and I come out a pawn up, actually, out of all of that. But there are other ways to play. I was wondering if he could sack the bishop there. Bishop takes g6, I could play bishop takes g4, threatening the knight. And that would be pretty dangerous. So, okay, so he just drops back. And he's not defending the bishop, but he's still defending the pawn. So now I can defend my bishop by moving it here or here. I mean, that looks more active, but I'm not sure. Just not sure. He's got checks, and he can drive my king here, and then maybe this pawn is loose. Maybe that's a problem. I can still attack his bishop. His bishop is not quite safe. So queen c2, bishop b3 to gang up on this pawn.
Check.
Yeah, so he snags a pawn, which is pretty logical, and he's also looking at this pawn. But queen c2 attacks his bishop, so he can't immediately take this pawn or this pawn. And he's running low on time here, so maybe I can get something going. So my idea was bishop b3. He takes a pawn, I take the pawn. Bishop takes, queen takes. This starts running. Looks a little dangerous, but I also have queen to this square. Does that help? Let's see, I can't threaten his bishop anymore. If I do that, defending my bishop that way, then he can take this pawn. If I defend the bishop here, then we get a repetition. If I go after the pawn, he takes, I take, he takes. He comes out ahead. I don't like that. So I need to defend the pawn and defend the bishop. Oh, and then he can also take this pawn. Yeah, I don't see anything here. Does not look good. Let's see, I could defend this pawn. I think I have to go for this pawn. Just doesn't seem to be working out. And I think his play is pretty simple. He just has a choice, but I would have taken the other pawn. But well, he has got knight to here. Attacking this pawn is maybe a problem. Let's take. Take. When the knight moves, I have a check. And take knight. So he goes there. I still have this check.
Check.
So now the pawns are even. He's got this passed pawn. I have two passed pawns, but his pawn is closer. Should I go for this endgame? I can stop that pawn with my bishop, and he's going to have trouble stopping my pair of passed pawns, isn't he? We'll see. So let's see. Let's just get those pawns going. Stop him from coming here. And let's keep going. And if I take, he takes, I push, he comes here. Let's allow that pawn to go one step further and blockade it like this. Then I think these pawns march home. And he doesn't believe me. Let's see. So I have to come over here and take this pawn. Yeah, maybe I had a better way of doing that. This should still be winning though, right? Because his king can't penetrate. I just need to round up this pawn. His king can't take over here because my bishop is defending. And so this should be working out in my favor eventually. Still can't move the knight. He can play with check. Okay, so let's be careful here and not allow too much nonsense from white here. This king is going there, so if I go here, the checks are here and there. Should be okay. Yeah, I can't stop him from winning that pawn. But what I hope to do is use my king position here. Let's see. Oh, he's got a check there. Okay, that's true. He's being pretty clever here for someone with limited amount of time. Wow. So if I take that pawn, he checks here and wins the bishop. I can't go to either side. I can go here or here. Here he's got a check that wins the bishop, and here he's got a check that wins the bishop. So should I take the pawn or should I defend the... I guess I should defend the bishop.
Check.
Aha, so he's not going to take the bishop.
Check. Check. Check.
Playing that in kind of a dangerous fashion. I think he had some kind of win there. But surely this is a win. I can't get back and defend the pawn in time. Complicated endgame. But with two pawns, I should be able to convert this. This guy was pretty tricky.
White forfeits on time.
Okay, but I think I finally had a win there. Anyway, interesting game. I will upload this and do a postmortem. See you guys later. Bye.